Hey everyone, Laura here.
Tanya here.
We've been friends for over a decade and worked together for a long time in call centers as agents, quality analysts, managers, and supervisors.
In 2018, we started up this podcast to talk about the batshit bonkers bullshit we see and continue to see in our time at work and at home as consumers.
We also share your stories as both consumers and as employees.
So keep them coming to Q as in cucumber at yahoo.com.
We host the show anonymously and use aliases. In the stories we tell, we change names and identifying details of people, locations, and companies.
We also share your emails anonymously, so any similarities to real people, locations, or companies is purely coincidental.
So if you think we're talking about you, guilty conscience much?
Now on with the fun.
Love your faces.
Smooches.
This call may be monitored and recorded for quality assurance.
This job would be great if it wasn't for the fucking customers.
You're always this stupid. It is you take lessons. Just calm down.
Oh, fuck you!
You can't handle the truth.
This call may be monitored and recorded for quality assurance.
In other words, be nice, asshole.
Oh, that's the one about the killer.
Robert Downey Jr. was in Zodiac?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
When was that movie?
Oh my god, it was a long ass time ago.
I was about to say, that had to be when he was fucking high.
Yeah, it was a long time ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, just so you're aware, we've been having a very fun little conversation.
About everything.
About how, why don't you get on mic and tell the story? Sophia is here, Tanya's daughter. By the way, welcome to Q as in Cucumber. I'm Laura.
I'm Tanya.
Okay. So, Sophia's here, and she was talking about how Robert Downey Jr. apparently lost his goddamn mind on
It's not
set.
the first time.
And of course, this had to be when he was like high as
Yeah.
fuck. Come here, tell the story real quick, Sophia.
Okay, so, I into really fun facts. So, I found something while, I was looking, and it said Robert Downey Jr., as a protest to not getting enough bathroom time, he was peeing in jars and putting them in different parts of the set where people could find them as protests. So, yeah.
For the movie Zodiac.
We should look that up. Like, he had to be high as shit. Like, what year was
What
that?
year-
And when did
look and see
Robert...
what year that was.
What year was Zodiac? And then Google what year Robert Downey Jr. got clean. Because I gotta know, man.
Because it was like the
mid-2000s
when he got clean.
Yeah.
Yeah, when he started making a comeback with his like Iron Man movies and all those other things. Because before that, he was just a fucking mess.
I do love him now, though.
You know what? I loved him before. I
loved him before. Like, I felt like he took risks as an actor. Like,
I love that movie, Chaplin. I could watch that. I love that movie.
Yeah.
I like Robert Downey. I think he has the best lips ever.
He does.
He
got
has
lovely
the
lips.
best lips
The movie came out
ever.
in 2007.
So
Oh,
that
yeah.
was like probably right around the time whenever he got sober and
Yeah.
he was realizing some shit and
Yeah.
probably.
I wonder what year... We're just going off on a tangent at this point.
What year
probably
did
cut all
Robert
this
Downey
out.
Jr.
But I
get
want to know
clean?
what year did was he found in that family's daughter's bed? Do you
Right?
remember that?
Yes, yes.
When he just broke into somebody's house and fell asleep in a
asleep
kid's bed?
Yeah.
Did Robert Downey Jr. Okay, so that happened. Oh, it was their son's bed. So that was 96. 2002, something happened. 2008, he had a paparazzi brawl. Okay, so yeah, 2007. He wanted more bathroom time where he could go get high.
Probably.
You know that's what it was. He wanted to be in the bathroom where he could shoot up.
Yeah, yeah.
No offense to Mr. Downey Jr.
Because I love you.
We do absolutely love you. Now, just so y'all know, and we have our production assistant, Sophia, here.
Say hello, Sophia. Say hello.
She's an attentive production assistant where she's like,
Pays
what?
so much attention to
Where?
us. Right?
Sophia's daughter, it's summer, obviously, and Tanya's daughter, Sophia, has been hanging out with us and helping us out and kind of adding some color commentary in the background.
Yes.
So we decided to give her a actual title.
She's a production assistant.
She's our PA.
Meaning she has to go get us something to drink and...
It means she's watching the news for us in case
in
news
case anything breaks.
that we want to see.
If she ever looks up from her phone.
I know, right? I'm paying attention.
Don't let
she
something
says.
good happen.
So the first thing I want to talk about really, really quickly is Laura Mac Consulting. I launched this a few weeks ago, where basically it's just I've gotten so many questions from people asking for career advice or, how to help with their resume or management, communication coaching, whatever the case may be. So I set up the website, laramac.com. It's LARAMACK.com. And what's been nice that it's not really on the website as far as like a service, but I started getting people emailing me like, hey, I'm dealing with this tough situation at work and I don't know how to handle it. What do I do? And that was a little unexpected. Like, I wasn't quite expecting it to be that.
Right.
But at the same time, I think they've heard us kind of talk about, me getting assaulted or your fall and how HR dealt with it and all that other stuff. And they're like, what do I do? Kind of needing just like that third party person.
Sometimes it's better to have somebody from the outside looking in. Like,
totally.
We have a new HR lady at work, and she's pretty good. I've spoken to her a few times in the last week about things, and I'm a little rough sometimes. I'd be the first one to tell you that. And I have really bad RBF, like super bad RBF. And I try to really control that. And, I've been working with her a little bit on how to maybe change my perception. And that's something that Carly had worked with me a lot.
Right. And I think you've made great strides for it, but I think it's always something.
Right. It's something I'm always going to have to come back and look at because I know how I can be. And if I'm in a bad mood or if I'm tired or if I've had the same question 57,000 times, I have to remember the same thing I tell my agents. This may be the 57th time you've heard that today, but it's the first time they've asked it. Mm-hmm. So get your shit together, Right. So I have to, that's something that I struggle with sometimes.
Girl, I don't blame you. So that's been nice. And it's been one of those things where it's like, okay, I know that's not on the website as far as a cost goes, but depending on the situation, it's literally been like $10. Like, because it just feels like, and even a couple of people that I did like free consultations with, I just gave them some advice and called it a day.
Right.
So, and I told them like, if you want to reach back out, I'll work with you on cost. Like, because it's, once again, sometimes you just need somebody to even give you one person I talked to. And all these people told me I could kind of share some details without, revealing who they are. But one person I talked to was like, look, I feel like they're wrong and I'm right, but everybody in my life is telling me I'm wrong.
Right.
Help me understand. And all I did was just talk to her for like a half hour and explain like, no, you're actually wrong. Right. And here's why. But I led her to that through probing. Like, I didn't tell her she was wrong. Right. I led her through that to probing, to where she finally came to the conclusion, oh, I am wrong. And she was like, wow, this has been very helpful to have somebody who's just a neutral third party, who's not, my husband who wants me to keep my job or my manager who needs me to hit numbers for their bonus. Like, it was a really positive conversation. And that is something that's a little unexpected from when I started the website, but I'm super down. So if anybody out there who's listening to this needs some help, take a look at the website. But if there's stuff that's not on there that you're like, maybe you can help. And if I can't, I could probably at least direct you to some resources that could.
Yeah.
Like, that's the goal.
Yeah.
So, but I did want to say thank you to everybody who's listened to the show, who's reached out. It's been really awesome. So thank you.
Good job, Laura.
So I got a question. From a guy, he private messaged me, and his question was, have you ever felt physically like in danger at work? Now, because we had talked about me getting assaulted, but the tone of the question seemed to be him asking like, did you think you might actually die, right, at any moment? And the thing that popped into my head, and this was, I don't, and I could be wrong, I don't necessarily know if I felt that way at Shucky's or at Shoe, but the one thing that popped into my mind was when I worked at the video store. I worked at a video store in the late 90s. which to anybody who's been paying attention to this podcast would probably explain why I'm a huge Kevin Smith fan. If you worked in a video store in the late 90s, you were a Kevin Smith fan, just so you're aware. But it was this weird, I can't even call it like a shopping center because it wasn't.
No,
It was so there was the video store and in this little parking lot it shared with these two other buildings that ended up creating this weird like triangle. So it wasn't even like a strip mall.
Because there was
it was like three little buildings plopped at weird angles that kind of faced each other.
Whenever I was a kid, it was that video store and then a Hostess bread store and something else. I can't remember what. And then right next to it was like a gas station or something. I can't remember, but
yeah, there is a gas station.
Yeah, so but it was yeah, because it was there forever. Because I used to live right down the street.
Oh yeah, so I worked at the video store, and then right across was like a bakery, and then they turned the other one into a bar, which I won't say the name of because
yes, it was a bar. That's right.
Yeah. So I worked there for years, and it could get a little dicey sometimes. A lot of times and we had an adult section, which eventually kind of took over the store when Blockbuster and Hollywood Video moved in down the street. All of a sudden, the little mom and pop that was the only one available went downhill. Yeah. But Blockbuster and Hollywood Video did not have an adult section, so that got expanded, which was creepy. What was really creepy about it is that we didn't have like. There wasn't like a section you could go into. All they had was a big binder that they cut the covers with the descriptions out, kind of like a CD case thing, and they put the covers of the movies into these little like plastic sleeves, and guys would just stand there for hours like flipping through to see which one they wanted to see.
That's funny.
Right? And then they would ask you for a number, and you would just go get that number tape and hand it to them.
Number 132.
I know, right? And it was like, oh my God. And what was really creepy was one day my history teacher walked in. He didn't know I was working because there was two of us that night because it was a Friday night, and he was standing there flipping through, and I walk out, and I'm like, I see him. He doesn't see me. He's flipping through. And I'm like, oh, God. So I tried to hide. But he was there for so long. And there were so many people on a Friday night who needed stuff. He finally walked up and was like, oh, hi, Laura.
I'll just take Free Willy.
And I was like, oh, God. Like, oh, Jesus. But guys were so creepy. Like, I was like 16, right? And they would look at, what's your favorite movie in here? And I would be like, My Ass. It's number 1024. And I just walk away. I was like, good Lord. And you had some creepy moments, don't get me wrong.
I'm sure.
Weird shit. But this night in particular, and I will admit that this was such a scary moment, especially as like a 16, 17-year-old kid, that I don't know if I have all the details right because it was that adrenaline surge of fear that some of the stuff I'm kind of filling in the blanks. It was super late because we would be open until closing of the bar. We'd be open till like 2, 3 in the morning, right? So you get drunk people wondering, did you have this movie? I'm like, no,
oh my God.
No, please go home. I can't tell you how many safe rides I called. But it's late. Nobody's in the store. We're literally about to close. And I'm sitting, there was like this wire rack thing with a desk behind it. So if you're standing at the counter, you can see the wire rack, and there's a person that can be sitting back there playing on the computer, and I could just look over the monitor and see somebody standing there, so I can just walk around, right? Okay, fine. I'm sitting there. I'm on the phone. I can't remember if I was on the phone with my mom or my dad. It was one of them. But they were like, are you coming home soon? Because I was not supposed to be working that night. And they were upset. They were like, that's because I was so young. They were like, we don't want you working until 2 in the morning. Like, this is dumb. Because they didn't feel it was safe.
No.
Especially a 16-year-old girl by herself next to a bar.
Yeah.
Like, this is not smart. So they were upset. So I'm on the phone with one of them. And all of a sudden, the phone goes beep, 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 beep. This is an emergency break-in from the police department. Please hang up the phone and answer it when it rings. And I'm like,
okay.
Mom? Dad, I gotta call you back. And they're like, oh my God. And so they hear this, but they don't know what's going on. They hang up. The second I hang up, the phone rings. I pick it up. It's a woman. She's like, this is so-and-so from the police department. We have a murder suspect in your area. Is there anybody in your store right now? And I'm like, literally nobody is in here. And they were like, we need you to go to the door and lock it and remain in the building until we call you back. I'm like, and I know this is legit because not the normal person in 1996 doesn't have technology to be able to do that. So I'm like, oh my God, right? She's like, put the phone down, do not hang it up, go lock the door, come back and tell me it is locked and you are secure within the building. I'm like, okay. I go running out from the counter and all of a sudden the little ding ding from the bells on the door and this giant motherfucker walks in. Huge. Now I'm 16 and I'm remembering this giant bald man covered in blood. Looks like something out of like Reservoir Dogs. And I'm like, oh, Jesus Christ. And I just kind of like, he didn't see me. Like he had this weird dazed look. And I just was like, hi. And I just ran back around to the phone. I pick it up. I'm like, no, ma'am, we don't have that movie in stock. And she's like, ma'am, I heard the bell. Did somebody just come in? I said, uh-huh. She says, is he 6'4", light-skinned?
Oh, my God.
Maybe with a bat? I'm like, uh-huh. And just at that moment, I see him come around the corner, and he literally is holding a baseball bat.
Oh, my God.
He's covered in blood. And I'm like, she's like, ma'am, do you have anywhere you can hide? And I'm thinking, there's a back door that literally has a sign on it that says this door must remain unlocked for fire purposes that does not open. Because it's got one of those metal door like things that is locked that only the owner has the key. So you can't actually open it. So I'm like, I can go to the bathroom. There's only a bathroom. And I'm like, I whisper that. And she's like, okay, I want you to go in there, leave the phone off the hook. Because by this point, this dude is like wandering around in the store.
Oh, my God.
And I don't know if he's even seen me.
And that wasn't a big place either.
No, it was not. I don't know if he's seen me. I don't know if he knows I am there because he's so clearly out of it. I'm like, oh, my God, right? I literally go in there, lock the door. I'm in there for like 20 minutes. I got no cell phone, nothing. And I'm losing my shit. And I hear like crashes and rumblings. And I don't know if he's just trashing the store. If there's going to be a shootout. I know nothing. All of a sudden I get knock, 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 knock. I'm like, hello? They're like, this is so-and-so from the police department. You can come out now, ma'am. I'm like, I would like your name and badge number and the telephone. Like,
I'm not coming out at all.
I was like, you can bring the phone because behind the counter was even tinier. It's like, okay, so there's the counter, there's the spot where you can stand, there's a thin little wall, and then there's maybe like a 2-foot hallway right behind that wall, right? You can pull the phone with the cord back to the wall, to the door of the bathroom. And I'm like, put it on speaker. I'm like, dial the police. I'm like, what is your name? He gives me his name. I was like, I'm yelling through the door. Do you have a police officer by the name? What's your badge number? I'm like,
oh, yeah, no.
I was not coming out of that room. No. You would have had to pry me. Like, I would have been like one of those cartoon cats with the fingernails in the walls. Like,
yeah, that shit is scary.
That was scary. Apparently, he had murdered 2 people over there at that bar with that baseball bat and was just wandering around all dazed and drunk. He'd gotten hit in the head with something, I don't know what, and he was fucking out of it. And they literally had like a tussle in the video store. And all those big wire racks were all over the place. Movies are everywhere. And I'm like,
I'm not cleaning that up. I'm going home.
I'm going home. And by this point, my parents have come down. Like, and the police are keeping them back. Yeah. So finally they were like, what are your parents' names? And I tell them, and they're like, okay, they're here. And they come running in, and I'm like, oh my God, Mommy.
I was almost going to die.
Like, oh, jeez. But that's really, I mean, there were moments where I felt physically intimidated that I might get hit. But I don't think I ever felt physically intimidated at work to the point where I thought I was going to be murdered.
I don't know.
Do you?
Yeah, well, so I had this job. I worked for Popeye's Chicken when I was probably about 17, 18 years old. I was just finishing up beauty school and everything, getting ready to take my boards, and I needed a job. So they built a Popeye's out on Fort Carson, so I got a job there. I'm thinking win-win. I get to meet guys, and I get fried chicken. I'm good. So that was like my whole thing, you know?
I want guys and
so
fried chicken.
Yeah, so I was like, cool beans. So this job, And I was the cashier for the drive-through.
Okay.
So, and we were open till like 10, 11 o'clock at night. Well, drunk GIs would come in there.
Right.
And so we started closing the lobby at a certain time and just making the drive-through open because of the drunk people, and it was right next to, like, within walking distance from one of the clubs on base. So one night we're standing there and somebody comes and I get their order and everything, and I go to, like, put my hand out the window to take their money, and the fucking guys grab me. They fucking grab me, and I'm not... I've never been a small person, but I wasn't nearly as big as I am now.
So you probably could have been pulled right through the drive-through window.
These fuckers, like, have a hold of my arms, and they're like, hey, and they're drunk, these GIs. I'm like, what the fuck? Man, the fry guy had to come, like, around and, like, get them to stop doing that.
Shut up.
It was, because stuff like that was always happening. I mean, it was scary to a point where, like, whenever we closed, one time me and, like, 2 other girls went outside to put the trash away, to put the trash in, like, that big, usually they have at fast food places, they have, like, that thing with the fence around it where their dumpster is at.
Mm-hmm.
And these guys, like, we threw the garbage down and took off running and went back in because they were, like, sitting out there
Oh my God.
and everything, because that was a scary-ass job. And then I used to work for this place that did UAs for people that were on parole and probation.
Oh, I forgot you had that job. I bet that was scary as shit.
A lot of people don't intimidate me a whole lot.
Right, but still.
But we did have
The
some...
occasional person, I bet did.
We had one time, me and my brother both worked there, and we came into work one day, and there was a love note and a rose stapled to the door for me. Yeah, there would be weird shit that would happen all the time.
Okay,
like
can we pause that for 1 second? When my nephew was born, I had driven up with my mom once we found out Ginger was in labor.
Mm-hmm.
So he was the first grandbaby, and my mom didn't want to drive alone. My dad, that whole 3 weeks was bonkers. My grandfather had died. A few days later, Lucas was born. My dad was still in Ohio for the funeral. We had to put my parents had to put our dog down. George proposed. It was my birthday.
Yeah.
I got promoted. That's all in like the same 3-week period.
Yeah,
it was bonkers, right? So we drove up, and my mom and dad were going to drive, but because my dad was in Ohio, I ditched work. I called and was like, look, I got to go.
Yeah.
Sorry. I got bereavement. I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, I gotta
Because I didn't take bereavement for my grandfather, so I was like, I changed my mind. I'm going to take bereavement. So I could only be up there for 3 days. But it's like a 15-hour drive. We drive all the way up. Finally, my dad, he flies back from Ohio to Colorado, gets his car, drives up there. Now, I got to go back to work. So I take the car and I drive home all by myself. And my dad and I went and found an audiobook for me to listen on the drive home. Because this is back in the day. So my dad bought me the first of those... One for the Money books. What's that lady's name? Janet Ivanovich.
Oh, okay.
That's what it's called. That's what the author's name is. But I'm listening to this book. I'm driving the 15 hours in fucking middle of nowhere from Montana to Colorado, right? And she's talking about in the book, she's got some guy that's like stalking her, right? So I'm listening, and at one point they get to a point where the guy had come to her house, right? And she says, basically, he like jacked off and shot all over her door, right? And it says, he left me love graffiti all over my door.
That's...
And I was driving. I had to pull over because I was laughing and grossed out so hard all at the same moment. I was like, oh my, and the real funny quick side story, I walk in and there's to this gas station that I pulled over in to get a soda. I'm still laughing and grossed out at the same time. There's a woman behind the counter, long gray hair all the way down to her butt, like 2 teeth, right? Older than dirt, and this guy delivering the Pepsis walks in and he goes, well, Mary, you're looking finer than frog's hair today. And I was like, I had never heard the phrase finer than frog's hair, and I was like, I gotta go. I gotta get home. I gotta get back to Colorado.
Where the normal people are.
Between this finer than frog's hair toothless chick and the love graffiti, I just need to be home. Sorry. Continue.
my God. Yeah, but so
That had to be scary as hell.
yeah. Like stuff, but weird shit happens to me anyways.
Yeah,
Like,
you are that. You and I are both. We've talked about this. You and I
Yeah.
are those people.
weird
that
shit
people
like
just
that
say
happens to me.
anything.
Yeah,
to
and
them.
so, and there's been a few times, like, even, like, I wouldn't even say scared at my job I have now, but there have been a few instances, like a couple weeks ago, I was leaving work, and they told me that right after I left, they locked the building down
Really?
because there was a guy in the parking lot with a samurai sword
Why?
and a gun, and
Why bring this sword?
I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, Sophia just said special effects.
I don't know, but
Just to show off.
it like barricaded it because we were moving sides of the building, and so we had a bunch of stuff that we weren't going to use that we had gotten
Right.
that was, and he had barricaded himself around his car, put all that stuff around him, and they had to call the police and everything. I mean, this dude was like outside taking a shower and this, washing his clothes. I mean, just he was living out in the parking lot.
Oh, dear Lord.
Yeah, we get a few of those. I mean, and I've never been in any real danger except for, getting pulled through the thing at
Yeah.
Popeyes or whatever. And then we would just normally call the MPs, and the MPs come, and they're like, all right. And we would always get the license plate number, and the guy would, end up in trouble. But never really got, I've never really been. The only time I've ever really been in any kind of danger was I was like 19 years old, and I was at a club. And I should not have been at the club, and he got shot up.
Oh, Lord.
Yeah.
Was that the La Jazz?
No, It was right over.
I remember a bunch of my friends when I was working at the semiconductor factory were at the Jazz when it got shot up.
Yeah,
and
the Jazz.
We all spent like days worried because they went out right after we got off work at 7 o'clock, and then we didn't have to work because that job was 3 days on, 3 days off, 4 days on, 4 days off. We all had 4 days off, and none of us could reach them.
Yeah.
And we were like, oh my God, are they okay?
You were probably still really young because I was only like 19. So.
Oh, yeah. So this is when I was
so
like
this was before then. It was this club that was off of Shelton and Academy where the library's at now. There was at the end of that shopping center, there used to be a club there a long, long time ago. I forget the name of it. But a couple of my friends were outside, and they were waiting to get in. They were in the line, and the guy that was standing next to one of my friends got shot in the shoulder. Had it been over just like maybe 6 inches, it would have shot her in the head.
Oh my God.
And then because I was in the club and we started hearing pop, 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 pop. And so everybody's like grabbing everybody and just trying to get down and everything else, and we're all like, what the fuck is going on? And the only and that was scary, but I was super drunk. And
so it slows the kind of senses.
Yeah.
Dulls the senses, I
then
guess is a better way to say
I
that.
go home and everything, and my mom's friend, Vernie, called her, and she was like, I just saw Tanya on the news this morning. There was a shooting at a club last night. And, oh, yeah, there I was, like, the news crew's out there, and I'm like, hey!
Oh, shut up. No, you're not.
Like an asshole.
I wonder if we can YouTube that.
If
it's somewhere.
It's so old.
Oh, my God.
That was like, had to be like 93, 92, 93. Yeah, bless you. It had to be something like that because, I was only like 19. But I had a fake ID. But, I mean, that wasn't even work related. That was just me being in a fucking bar,
Yeah.
So.
So there was one, I'll tell this story and then we'll make this a little one, then we'll wrap it up. So the one thing, the one moment, and like I said, I was not there, I was not involved, but I was connected to it a little bit, right? When I first started working at Newton's, this was a company that wasn't a big call center. They were in, I'm not going to go into details because it'll really give away who they are, but they were going through a lot of transitions. Their systems were not advanced for how big they were, but they were only that big because of the transitions. Like I said, long story. But when I first started there, I had gone to one of our sister sites, which was a much smaller site in a very little town, right? And everybody in the town pretty much worked for this company, right? And when I first get there, I am told that they're having an issue because their phone systems were not set up the way that they should have been with a robo blocker, right? Because people overseas especially can set up one of those dialer things and basically like hold your phone system for ransom, right? so where you can't get calls in or out until you pay them something. They didn't have that set up, and for the size of company they should have known better.
Yeah.
So I show up, and none of our entire sales department cannot get calls in or out because this guy is blocking up the phone lines, demanding an agent by the name, we'll just call her Mary Smith, right? He had scammed Mary Smith out of some money years before, and now he knows that this is where she works, and he's trying to get more. So he's blowing up our phones but she's not an agent on the phones anymore. So he's never going to get her, right? She's not an agent.
Right.
She's never going to pick up the phone. She's not on the dialer system. You have to have her number.
Right.
So he's calling and asking for Mary Smith all goddamn day. Our salespeople can't get calls in or out. Customers are pissed, and nobody knows what to do. And it's pretty much been down for a week. And I'm like, he's doing a fake collections thing.
Right.
And they come to me because I had just started and they knew I came from collections. And nobody knew all of this information about the robo-blocker and he's holding it for ransom. All they knew is this guy was calling and blocking up their phone lines, trying to get her, wanting money from her, right? So they come to me. As soon as I walk in the building, they're like, "Are you Laura?" I'm like, "Yeah." They're like, "We're having a problem." And I'm like, okay. So they tell me. So I literally go and I stand in the middle of the floor, in the middle of the sales group. And I'm like, because here's the thing. All their phones are ringing. They're picking them up, but nobody's there. Because the guy is only one guy. So it's random as to who's going to get him. And we got 4 sites.
Right.
Who's going to get him? So he cusses out when they say, "No, we're not going to give you Mary Smith," cusses him out, hangs up. Then another person gets him. So for 20 minutes, I stand on the floor. Whoever gets him. And they were calling him Robert. Because at some point, he gave the name Robert. Mm-hmm. And it became shorthand where Robert's on the phone. It's like, great. Everybody knows Robert, right? So I'm standing in the middle of the floor, and I'm like, the next person who gets Robert, raise your hand. I'm coming to you, right? A few minutes later, I got him. I go running over. I'm like, "Hi, my name's Laura. I'm a supervisor here, right? You are in violation of the Fair Debt Collections Practices Act, passed by the United States Congress in 1976. And I rattle it off. Like, this is illegal. We will be reporting you to the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, to the Colorado Attorney General, to the police. Like, I'm rattling it off because I know this script.
Right.
You and I know this script of what you say to people harassing your people, right? This is what you're doing. He curses me out, calls stop. And everybody's like, "Oh my God, you fixed it." I go over to the lawyer for Newton's, and she's like, "Oh my God." I'm like, "Look, you don't have a robo-blocker. That's what he is doing. He's trying to get you. He's trying to ransom to your company. You have to upgrade your security, like, now."
Yeah, because...
And she was like, "Okay." So for the next few months, everybody's kind of like, different security companies are coming in. They're trying to figure it out because we've got all these mergers and changes happening. So there's different systems. It's very complicated. So every now and then we would get him, and I gave everybody the script, and I was like, "Say this." People would do it. He would stop, blah, blah, blah. And one day I'm on the phone with one of my counterparts in that little town, right? Now, this building that they built for them is gorgeous. It's in the middle of this kind of like valley type thing, right? 360 views, floor to ceiling windows on every floor, gorgeous views. There's like a little creek that runs right past it. It's a gorgeous place to be, right? Well, I'm on the phone with her. What do I want to call her? Call her Helga, because I can't think of another name right now. Helga. I'm on the phone with Helga, and all of a sudden she's like, "Laura, I gotta go. SWAT's here." I'm like, "What?"
What the fuck?
In this tiny little nowhere town.
Right.
I'm like, "What?" And she hangs up. And I call my boss. He's out of state. And I'm like, Helga just told me SWAT is storming the building in this little town. And he's like, "I beg your pardon?" I'm like, and he's like the most not reacting dude on the planet. Right. And he starts freaking out. And I'm like, "What the fuck?" And for like an hour, we're all trying to get information because a lot of our sites did a lot of work back and forth. Everybody knows something is going on down there. And we're like, "What the fuck just happened?" And apparently what happened was this dude, this Robert dude, was so pissed that we blocked all of his shit. He called up the police department in that little town and told them that Mary Smith had a gun in the building.
Oh my God.
So they treated it as an active shooter situation. And they ran up to Helga and they were like, get under your desk. You're not near a door. You need to stay under your desk and hide. And she can see, her desk is right up against the windows. She can see the SWAT from the little town are literally like crawling.
Oh my God.
And snipers on the building because all around them are these hills. Right? And she can see snipers and everything. They have stormed the building, right? Looking for Mary Smith. This dude tried to get her killed. She's shaking and crying. She's embarrassed. Everybody knows the story now. Like, everybody already knows she's being harassed like this.
Right.
Now this happens. Like, he tried to get her killed. It was insane. And we were all terrified because I think it was our 3 of our counterparts, I believe, 1 was there, 2 were there permanently, and 1 was there visiting. And we were like, are we about to, and we only were like a 5-person team. Like, we're going to lose half of our team. Like, what is,
God.
like, we didn't know. All we're hearing is like, SWAT has stormed the building, call you back. And then what kills me? Fucking Helga. Girl, I love you. If you listen to this, you know who you are. I love you. But after that, she didn't call me back to let me know she was okay. She went to lunch.
She don't know if Helga's
She just
dead
disappeared.
or in jail.
I was like, you could call a bitch. Like,
oh my God.
So that is the story of Robert and Helga. So
I mean, at my job, because, you know,
right.
of the people that we hire, so the police are up there often. Probation, parole officers, bail bondsmen, you know, the legal officials.
The legal officials.
You know, people of that sort. One of my agents had to get off the phone the other day because she was like, I need to take this. It's my public defender about my case. I was like, okay. Whatever.
Okay. All right. So that's our episode for today. So until next time, I'm Laura Mack.
And I'm Tanya Edwards.
Love your faces.
Smooches.
Like what you hear? Rate, review, and subscribe on iTunes or your favorite podcasting platform. And follow us on our Facebook page by searching Q as in Cucumber. You can also follow us on Twitter and Instagram by searching QAIC_Lara, LARA, and QAIC_Tanya, TANYA. Don't forget to check out our other show, hosted by me and Jessica James, called The Parent Memoirs. And we want to hear from you. Share your stories by emailing us at qasIncucumber@yahoo.com, and you might just hear your stories on a future episode. Love your faces.
This call may be monitored and recorded for quality assurance.